Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Florida Climate Week, where today, over the next hour, we're going to be taking a close look at innovative and technology solutions from agriculture as a climate change solution platform. My name is Ernie Shea. I am the president of Solutions from the Land, and I'm going to be moderating today. And over the course of the next hour, we're going to be talking about how Florida's farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners can be helping to address the climate crisis by bringing practical solutions forward that many people may not even be aware of. So we're really thrilled to have this opportunity to talk about agriculture on the front end of Florida Climate Week. And to get us going, I think what I will do here is share my screen and pull up our slide deck for today. So if you give me just a minute, we will go from the beginning. Okay, in terms of Florida agriculture and climate change, this is a body of work that is occurring all across the country, and the organization that I'm a part of, Solutions from the Land, is a farmer, rancher, forester-led not-for-profit, and we're working hard to try to reposition the agricultural landscapes around the country to not just produce food and fiber, what agriculture is known for, but to go beyond that and think about how land can be managed to deliver solutions to all kinds of global challenges that are often framed up as the global sustainable development goals that have been adopted by the United Nations to improve quality of life around the world. So we're in the business of thinking about how agricultural landscapes can be used to improve soil and water quality, biodiversity. And a term that we're using more and more now in our space is improving the delivery of ecosystem services, things that provide value to all of us in our everyday lives. And the reason why the world really needs agriculture is because the challenges we're facing are growing exponentially. And if you just step back and think about the world itself, I know we're talking about Florida today, but on a global scale, these same challenges that we're experiencing in Florida are occurring on every continent in the world. We have population growth that's going to take our planet to somewhere near 10 billion people by the year 2050, only about 3 decades away. We're losing farmland at an alarming rate. We're having natural habitats converted. We're dealing with more and more frequent increased severe and extreme weather events. We're dealing with losses of biodiversity. And of course, climate change is a major threat multiplier and an accelerator of these challenges that we as a world, we as a state in the state of Florida are working to overcome. So it's with that backdrop that a group of Florida agricultural leaders have come together to really focus on the climate crisis and to deliver solutions that will not just result in a better environment, but will result in improved livelihoods, in health, and quality of life for all of the residents of the state as well as the world. So it's a big challenge that we're operating under, but I think for the most part, it can be defined by working lands being managed to deliver solutions to these multiple challenges, not the least of which is climate change. So we have been building a team of leaders across the state of Florida that are working together to deliver solutions. And we're doing that by bringing farmer, rancher, forester leaders together with our academic partners at the University of Florida, with our business partners, and with all of the value chain partners that are part of Florida agriculture, working together as a team. And today we're going to be hearing from several of these partners in terms of their take on the climate challenge and what they're doing to deliver solutions. So we have 3 great panelists today, and each of them are going to talk somewhere around, I think we said 8 to 10 minutes. And then we're going to come back and we're going to have a question and answer session where we'll have an opportunity to answer questions that you have about the role of Florida agriculture and forestry and how this industry can be working with you to deliver solutions to the climate crisis that we're working to address. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn next to Ed Bravo. Ed is the past president of the Florida Nursery and Growers and Landscape Association. Ed is an inaugural member of the Florida Climate Smart Agriculture Work Group. And Ed's going to be talking to us about the horticulture industry and the ways his industry can be working to deliver climate solutions. So Ed, over to you.
Good morning, all. First of all, I just want to let you know that I am a landscaper and a nurseryman, a grower. So please bear with me. This public speaking is not generally in my wheelhouse, but here we go. On behalf of FNGLA, thank you, Ernie, for the invitation to participate in this year's Florida Climate Week, turning a new leaf in messaging. With more and more people moving to Florida, diversified landscape services will continue to be in high demand. Many of us in today's webinar are guilty of quickly disparaging new Florida residents who want their landscapes here to reflect their home landscapes back in the Northeast and the Midwest. New residents especially are not educated as to what will work best in their new Florida landscapes or how to maintain them. Yet all of us on this webinar want landscapes to use more sustainable products, practices, use less water, improve wildlife habitat, include more pollinator and native plants, improve air and water quality, mitigate soil erosion, and reduce overall carbon footprint. Despite the very best of intentions, I suggest to you the industry, academia, environmental groups, and government officials are working against each other in our messaging. Consumers are hit from all different directions with similarly themed yet very different messages. Some might say use only natives, remove all turf, don't ever apply pesticides, don't fertilize during the summer rains, while others say don't fertilize during the winter when plants are dormant. Consumers are told to conserve water, to always be water wise, and to reset their timers seasonally. The terms resilient and sustainable are so overused and misunderstood that very few consumers really know what they mean. Despite all the messaging to get Florida residents to do the right thing for all the right reasons, our often competing messaging lacks the one essential central core element, a sense of place. It's time for all of us to drop our solo approaches and work together with a singular message with a real sense of place, Florida-friendly landscaping. A singular message which embraces right plant, right place, water efficiency, fertilize effectively, use mulch correctly, manage yard pests responsibly, attract wildlife, recycle yard waste, reduce stormwater runoff, and protect the waterfront. A singular, straightforward consumer message around which we can all rally, because Florida-friendly landscaping conveys sustainability, efficiency, responsibility, resilience, and all in a real Florida sense of place. Even the legislature formally recognizes Florida-friendly landscaping in the Florida statutes as meaning quality landscapes that conserve water, protect the environment, are adaptable to local conditions, and are drought tolerant. I would respectfully suggest that we don't try to reinvent the wheel here. The Florida-friendly landscape standards can be successfully applied statewide if they are updated periodically. Landscape industry initiatives. For several years, FNGLA and the industry have been working on impactful actions to reduce water use, increase irrigation efficiencies, and generate sustained water conservation. These actions include water conservation rule, the green industry's best management practices, Florida-friendly landscaping, the Center for Landscape Conservation and Ecology, the Water Star program, Flip My Florida Yard series, the investments in research, new irrigation delivery tools, technologies, and consumer products. And recently, FNGLA has created a landscape irrigation service technician certification. According to the Florida 2070 Water Report, Florida's population will grow to 35 million residents in the next 50 years, which they project will double our current water consumption. FNGLA believes that Florida's landscape industry has a significant and pivotal role to ensure there will be a sufficient and a sufficient supply of water to meet Florida's diverse needs. The 2070 water report went on to conclude the single most effective strategy to reduce water demand in Florida is for individuals to significantly reduce the amount of water used for landscape irrigation. The report's conclusion was a serious wake-up call for my industry. In response, FNGLA established a landscape irrigation committee comprised of irrigation manufacturers, distributors, irrigation and landscape contractors, water management officials, and UF-IFAS representatives. The mission is to guide and drive the industry to maximize landscape irrigation efficiency and save water. Actions include opening up the gateways for more landscape and irrigation professionals to take the state voluntary irrigation license exam by DBPR. Also, updated updated Florida-friendly landscape design standards, and to reach out to DEP and the executives of all 5 water management districts to seek their endorsement and adoption of these proposed revisions. Climate policy and the Florida urban forest. In many parts of the country, reforestation of current urban areas defines the entire scope of their urban forestry practices. It's very different here in Florida, as our urban areas are only a fraction of their projected future size. We need to convince public policymakers that our urban forests, green spaces, and green stormwater infrastructure are natural components of climate policy choices. So we must position and fund UF-IFAS to conduct the best scientific research it can deliver. The future of landscapes in Florida faces a lot of challenges, yet some of the very best solutions are within our reach, if we're willing. These solutions call for us to, 1, reposition and rebuild the trust so that once again, public policy is based on sound science and facts rather than emotion, political agendas, and ideology. Number 2, rally around the singular overarching Florida-friendly consumer message. Number 3, maximize irrigation efficiencies and implement modern landscape irrigation design standards. Number 4, continue to foster and embrace technological advances. Number 5, broaden large native shrub, tree, and pollinator plant production statewide. Number 6, plant diversity, not monocultures. And lastly, number 7, convince policymakers to embrace the ecosystem and environmental benefits of plants and trees as natural choices when developing climate policy. Florida's nursery and landscape industry has a pivotal role to play. In implementing these calls to action, landscapes in Florida will prove to be one of the most effective tools and investments in conserving Florida's water resources, protecting our natural resources, and creating inspiring, healthy places to live, work, and play. On behalf of FNGLA, I wish to thank Ernie Shea, Solutions of the Land, and Florida Climate Smart Ag Group for the opportunity to participate in this discussion. Thank you, Ernie.
Great, Ed. Thank you. Boy, you give us a lot to think about. We'll come back and unpack as we get into our discussion session following our next 2 presentations. So thank you for helping us understand how the nursery industry can fit as a climate solution provider. Okay, we're now going to turn to our second speaker, and that is Amy Yoder. And if I can figure out how to advance the slide, hang on one second. I may need to stop the sharing and come back and reload it. Let me try again. Amy, hang in there.
No problem, Ernie.
Let's see. Technology, just when you think we've got it ready to go. There we go.
There we go.
A little technical hiccup.
No
Amy with Anuvia, welcome.
Thank you, Ernie. I appreciate it. And thank you for giving me the invitation to be able to speak on this very important topic. So as Ernie said, I'm Amy Yoder, CEO of Anuvia. And what we do at Anuvia is we actually manufacture a bio-based plant nutrient or a bio-based fertilizer. And when you go back to what Ernie was saying a little bit earlier, I'd like to echo some of the reasons on why sustainability is really important and how we believe our product fits into that. So when you think about agriculture as a whole, it contributes to greater than about 10% of the greenhouse gas emissions that that we see in the U.S. today. And really the three key areas that impact this are what we call nutrient efficiency or nutrient loss. Right now, when farmers put on nutrients, about 50%, up to 50% of those can be lost. So if they're putting on 100 pounds, they get a utilization, particularly on nitrogen, of roughly half of that. It can go up to that. The other area is really that environmental impact. Ernie mentioned it earlier. Ed also mentioned it as well, is thinking about what the alternate impact is when you're putting on this fertility. It can be water quality in terms of leaching, and that ultimately has impacts on our ecosystem from a variety of different areas. And the last piece is really soil health. So continual practices in agriculture have proven and have shown detrimental to some of the soil quality pieces, particularly microbiome and soil organisms. Those soil organisms actually help with water quality. They help rebuild new soils, and making sure that we have that correct balance is really important when you think about producing more food on less land, as we alluded to a little bit earlier. So with that, Ernie, if you'd kind of switch to the next slide, please. So what we do at Anuvia is we've really thought about ourselves as a foundation technology that can help deliver sustainable solutions to large-scale production agriculture. I'm going to talk about production agriculture because that's really the driver behind us, but we also manufacture a product that goes into professional turf or commercial turf, which would be the lawn care, landscape, and golf, and also on the consumer side that homeowners could utilize as well. And the technology is basically the same. So what our technology does is we actually take an organic waste material that is being thrown away today, i.e. like a food waste, can be what we could determine agronomic waste, like whey from a dairy plant, from a dairy producer plant, could be peanut hulls from a peanut producing plant. And rather than where that goes today, which is in the landfill, we actually take that, our technology breaks it down, and then we add nutrients, and we use that, or that bio-based component is really the docking station for the nutrients, and that's what really helps the nutrient efficiency. The benefits behind this technology are really key. One is for a farmer or a homeowner or a turf producer, it's really a bigger, better crop. And that's because the plant actually can utilize those nutrients. Those nutrients stay in that soil zone a little bit longer, and the plant can pull them as they need them. It improves soil health. Every pound of our product contains 16% organic matter. That organic matter is in a form that actually feeds a lot of the soil microbes, so that it doesn't have to go through a conversion process. We reduce nutrient loss and runoff because those nutrients stay where they are, and that in turn helps the reduction of greenhouse gas on the acre because the nutrients stay where they are, where the plant can actually utilize them. And because we take that waste, we really utilize that whole circular economy. We've developed the product to be plug and play. It's really important for us in terms of thinking about ourselves as a foundation to make it easy for farmers to be able to utilize, so it can work with their large scale practices and what they do today. And what it really contributes to is an ability for a farmer to be able to utilize less fertilizer than what they're consuming today, because then more nutrients are going on, right? And because of that, what we've seen is really a really quick adoption. Farmers have seen the benefit, and what they've been seeing is a nice return on investment for them when they put this product down in terms of benefit in crop yield and less nutrient loss. So Ernie, if you want to go and take to the next slide. Maybe.
So Amy, it's stuck again for some reason. It won't advance. Let me.
Well, I was gonna say I can talk to it worst case scenario, but it just makes it a little bit easier if you can see it.
Yeah, I'll see if I don't know why it's sticking, but we'll see if it works now. There we go.
There it is. So Anuvia is a really young company. So I joined the company in 2015, and we were actually still a technology in a lab. So in 2017, we actually launched our product for the very first time in all three of the markets that I talked about. And since that time frame, we've been used on over 1.2 million acres. And so when I talk about the sustainability and what we can actually deliver, this is really what we have done from that standpoint. So we work with a variety of firms to be able to measure and collect the data on our product as it goes out into the agricultural community. So since we've launched the product on this 1.2 million acres, that would represent close to 12 million pounds of carbon that goes right back to the soil. We've removed over 150,000 metric tons of greenhouse gas, and we've reduced about almost 20 million pounds of nitrogen that would have normally been lost into the environment. So when you think about what our technology delivers, to put it into pretty simple terms, is, as I said before, we put 8 pounds of carbon down for every 100 pounds of product. So a typical use rate for a farmer is between 125 to 200 pounds an acre. There's 50% less leaching of nitrogen than a straight urea. So that's really important when we talked about in terms of nutrient efficiency and that greenhouse gas, because that's really where the nitrous oxide is produced, which results in basically a reduction of greenhouse gas by up to 32%. And then what we've seen in terms of soil health is a greater than 200% increase in the soil microbes. And that's been very important because that really is that long-term benefit when we think about regenerative practices that farmers can utilize. So the exciting thing about this is our product can be used on all crops, so in all areas of the country and, quite frankly, all areas of the world. We've been actively working with partners to expand the technology, not only in the United States, but also globally in Europe and South America. So very excited to call Florida home and to be able to work with the fine partners on this call.
Great. Well, Amy, thank you very much. The theme of this session is innovation and technology. And you've just given us great example of cutting edge biological technologies that are being scaled up in Florida and maybe around the world. So thank you so much. Okay, our third speaker this morning is Diane Rowland with the University of Florida. Diane is chair of the agronomy department, but I know her as one of the core anchor partners in the Florida Climate Smart Agriculture Work Group and has been doing some really exciting work with us, helping to understand and appreciate the role of artificial intelligence and monitoring and how these new tools can be deployed at scale to help farmers, ranchers, forest landowners, landscapers do a better job of managing the resource base. So I will go back to screen share, Diane, and turn this over to you, and hopefully we'll advance. Let's see if it works. There we go.
Thank you, Ernie, very, very much. And I feel very grateful to be a part of this panel and to be working with these folks. It's been a pleasure over the last several years. I'm going to build on Ed, Amy, and what Ernie have said, and I'm going to start off with those points that Ernie was talking about to try to explain the role that a land-grant university like the University of Florida has to play in this whole process. And really what Ernie has listed on this slide, as he mentioned, is really a focus on the delivery of ecosystem services. So what are ecosystem services? They're really the benefits that the land provides back to people. So some of the things that Amy mentioned, like soil health, water quality, biodiversity, those are all benefits back to people. And we've been relying on those benefits for thousands of years, really, sometimes for our very survival from food and water. And so some of these services, like the global demand for safe food, that's really a provisioning ecosystem service. The support of economic growth and sustainable development, that has to do with cultural ecosystem services. Soil, water, and air quality really have to do with ecosystem services that regulate and support the function of those services. So it all feeds back into ecosystem services. The last point that he makes about mitigation and adaptation help explain why ecosystem services are so important. So they not only benefit people, but ecosystem services benefit the system itself. So they help the system be resilient. And I agree with Ed, we talk a lot about these terms, sustainable, resilient. So let me back up just a second and define what that means. Resilience really is the ability of a person, a plant, or even a system to navigate through change and return back or close to its original state. And oftentimes we assume that that original state is a good state. And so we want to go back to that beneficial state. So resilience is really important, and it's a key critical component of our discussion about climate change, because we want our systems to be resilient. We want them to stay in that beneficial state. And so ecosystem services are really keys to how the systems navigate that climate change. All right, Ernie, can you go to the next slide?
Well, we got a sticky little slide deck today for some reason. So let me go back out again. Hang on one second, Diane.
No problem.
It seems like it only advances when I reload.
Well, the next point I want to make is really what the land grant university like UF has to play in this process having to do with ecosystem services. So a land grant has 3 mission areas in research, education, and extension. Those are our purpose for being. And really each of those 3 mission areas has a role to play in this discussion about ecosystem services, resilience, and climate change. First off, research really helps us understand what ecosystem services are. It also helps us measure them and to understand how they really function in systems. Research also is very key in developing some of those new technologies that Ed talked about. And so we are always looking at the horizon, scanning for challenges that are coming up having to do with climate change, and also opportunities in which we can address the needs with research. An example at UF now is our push for artificial intelligence, and that has to do with all 3 mission areas. So UF has identified this as a wonderful opportunity on the horizon to build strength into the institution to deliver what our stakeholders need. The second mission area has to do with education. And this is really about training the next generation, not only to measure ecosystem services, understand them, but really ensuring that they have the knowledge, the skills, and the hands-on experience really to be effective. It's also important that we train them and give them the freedom to be creative in the way they think about these things. So we're moving more and more away from there's a certain answer, there's a certain paradigm, to really encouraging students to, sorry for the term, but think outside the box, be very creative about developing and exploring new solutions, because that's what this is going to take to address climate change. The last mission area is extension, which really feeds into what Ed talked about with helping about our messaging, being clear about the message that we hold together. The other piece of that is making sure that we extend the technology that's developed in research to extend that knowledge and technology equitably, make sure that it is broadly available and that it is useful and explainable. So making sure that we're developing technologies and tools that actually solve the problem. That's really key. All right, sorry, Ernie, but can we go to the next one? So now I'm going to just show you a couple of examples of some of the things that we're doing within this space. The first one has to do with a new network that we're setting up called AI Mesh, and it's really using artificial intelligence to monitor ecosystem services with the hub, with the H at UF. And what this is we are setting up monitoring stations and utilizing the help of our stakeholders, our producers, to begin collecting data in various systems. So the little schematic on the right basically shows you the kinds of data that we may be able to collect, things on root systems, on the crop performance, looking at new technologies of imaging for satellites or for drones, and collecting all of that data and taking advantage of the ability to work as a team, as a network across the state, to develop artificial intelligence tools which allow us to look at that data in a much more complex and usable way than we've ever been able to do before. So it should be able to deliver some of the solutions, new solutions that we really need. We have started this network focused on nutrient applications. And so right now we have a team that is working to collect some of that data and begin to form those new tools. Okay, the last example, very good, is a new center that UF is a part of in collaboration with 3 other institutions, the University of Pennsylvania, Purdue, and UC Merced. And this is a wonderful opportunity that UF has been included on. And the focus of this center, which is called the IoT for Ag, the Internet of Things for Agriculture, is to deliver 3 things: advanced sensors, as we've talked about, new sensors, sometimes combining existing sensors in new ways, so we can be able to sense in a different way, a more sensitive way than we have before, the crop condition, the soil health properties, all of those things. The second is to deliver power and communication solutions, which we know are sometimes a challenge in rural areas. So making sure that there's enough power to run drones and that the data is communicated back to the end user. And the last delivery is using artificial intelligence to deliver usable tools. And so what's unique about this center is that it's really a circular process where the stakeholder, the producer, is involved in the process in every step. And so we go back, we go to the producer to find out what solutions are needed, go back and develop those sensors. It runs through the cycle, and we make sure that those tools then are usable, explainable to the producer in a circular fashion. And we reiterate and improve those tools as we go. So those are just a couple of examples of how UF is involved in this process. And as I said, we're very grateful to be a partner, especially with Solutions from the Land and a Florida Climate Smart Ag. And we look forward to continuing that partnership into the future.
Diane, well, thank you very much, as well as Amy and Ed. Really appreciate those initial setup presentations. We designed this to give kind of just a quick snapshot in 3 or 4 different areas of work underway within the agriculture sector to deliver solutions to climate challenges. And as they've all pointed out, all of our speakers, the solutions that we're providing go way beyond just climate solutions and address things like water quality, biodiversity, and so forth, those other sustainable development goals. So what we're going to do now is shift into a question and answer session where we invite you to submit questions for our panel members in the Q&A box. And I think you might be able to do it in the chat box as well. I'll monitor both of those and we'll be posing questions to our panel members. So while you think about your questions, though, I'm going to start off with a couple of questions to each of the individuals, and then we'll integrate your questions as they come in. And Ed, let me start with you. You talked a lot about the role of green landscapes and the nursery industry and delivering these solutions to climate challenges and other important priorities for the state. And I heard you talk a lot about water as a key tool to be managing in a more efficient way. But I'm sure that your partners are constrained with more than challenges around water. Can you talk a little bit about how higher temperatures, whether nighttime temperatures or abnormal temperatures with creating unpredictable growing conditions have presented some challenges, or maybe in the invasive species arena or plant pests, weeds that are popping up? There's your members are challenged with a variety of factors that are being further exacerbated by climate change. Can you talk a little bit about some of those other challenges, Ed?
Certainly. Well, sitting on the committee and listening to the challenges that ranchers and farmers have, it dawned on me that we're having very similar effects that we're dealing with. We're experiencing disease and insects that we didn't experience 40 years ago when I first started in this industry. That may be normal to a certain extent, but certainly the changing environment around us and the climate and the temperatures play a big part in that, along with storms that we're seeing and a little bit more regularity, bringing things in that weren't here before. So we're adapting and we're adjusting to that. But to get to your point about water, everything that we do in agriculture, especially including horticulture, revolves around the accessibility and the availability of good water on a regular basis to keep our landscapes and our products in prime condition. With that in mind, here in Alachua County, where I'm at, I'm proud to say that we've installed a very stringent irrigation code, which is the law of Alachua County now, where every irrigation system has to be designed and installed and maintained to Water Star standards. So I was brought to the altar screaming and kicking several years ago. I was not for it. I had been doing things a certain way for a very long time, and now I'm proud to say I'm the poster child for Water Star in this area. We're saving between 40 and 60% of the water we used to consume on an average residential property. Commercial properties are no different. They have to be designed with the Water Star criteria. And that irrigation design is based on Florida-friendly landscape principles. So now we're not designing to water square feet of a project. We are designing to water specific items in specific parts with just the right amount of water and no more. So I'm proud to say that I'm a better landscape irrigation designer because of that. And with that, with as proud as I am of where we are in Alachua County with the irrigation ordinance, the fertilizer ordinance, the strictest, most restrictive fertilizer ordinance in the state, pretty much abandoned science. It did not follow the recommended science and research that University of Florida provided. And that's what I mean about following the research and science and not following our hearts and our agendas. I'm sad to say that it does not always work out. And in this case, in Alachua County, the only people that are allowed to fertilize for 8 months out of the year are unlicensed, unprofessional, untrained individuals. And I'm sad to say that the commission got it wrong. They absolutely got it wrong in that case. But moving on from that, the industry is prepared to adjust and work with the products that are coming available that may be able to help us transition from the old way of doing nutrients to the new way of doing landscape nutrients. So with that said, I think I've covered most of what you asked.
Okay, Ed, thank you. Well, Ed, you touched on fertilizers. Let me go to Amy with that one. There seems to be a pretty significant debate underway around the world about the role of fertilizer, nutrient management. And for some, they seem to have an oversimplistic approach. We'll just ban the use of fertilizer. But when we're trying to feed that growing population that's going to top 10 billion people without expanding the footprint of agriculture, it seems like nutrient management is the solution rather than just banning. Have you been with your product and its ability to be used more precisely? Where do you see this debate trending?
Actually, see the debate trending, Ernie, exactly where you are. I think the ban of outright fertilizer doesn't make any sense at all, right? So I can speak a little bit to that just from a historical perspective. So I grew up 6th-generation farmer. So my grandfather will tell you when they were growing crops before they were growing fertilizer, and I'll just use corn as an example. He did more acres, and they averaged bushels between 38 to 40 bushel per acre. Right now, you're using less land, and you're averaging between 150 to 200 bushel an acre in the main corn states. That's important when you're thinking about trying to feed 10 billion people on less land, right? So, but what I do think is important is I do think nutrient efficiency is incredibly important, because think about it from two perspectives. Not only the environmental impact that I spoke about earlier, which is the nutrients going where we don't want them, right, in a water system, or being a contributor to greenhouse gas. but also think about it from a farmer's perspective, where they're actually paying for these nutrients that don't actually get to utilize, because nutrients are used from a crop standpoint to help produce yield, but they're also from a vigor and a disease resistance and be able to be a much healthier plant so that you can combat some of the other pestilence that you have. So I'm a big proponent on nutrient efficient products, different ways to be able to utilize them, utilizing technology for proper placement and proper timing. Those things are going to be, and I always look at the product that we provide, one tool when people ask me about it, one tool in a whole toolbox of to me, different techniques and items that farmers and homeowners will be utilizing in the future.
Well, that's a great point, that there is not just one tool in the toolbox, that we need to rely on all of them and working as multiple systems. So Diane, you talked about artificial intelligence as a tool to help farmers, ranchers, others manage land better and deliver the outcomes that we're hoping for. We're on the cusp of having new incentives emerge that will actually provide value to a producer for the carbon they put in the soil, the amount of water that they store, and the other ecosystem services that you talked about, reducing nutrient, as an example, nitrogen, phosphorus. So how will the markets that are being set up have certainty that the outcomes that we think and know farmers and ranchers and other land managers are delivering, how can they be verified? Is that where artificial intelligence comes in one way or another?
So I think first, Ernie, is making sure that we set the system up for quantifying those things based on science, as Ed mentioned. So making sure that the measurement of those delivery of ecosystem services is based in science, objective, and accurate. I think that artificial intelligence helps us in a way to gather the complexity of the interactions in the system. So we talk about, right now we're focused on soil carbon, but we know that that interacts across the system with water quality, with many other aspects. And artificial intelligence now is going to allow us to look at that in a much more complex and relevant way. But we can also then make sure that we're going back, as I mentioned in that loop in the second example, that we're going back and we're verifying that those answers make sense, that they are workable for the system in which we are measuring. And artificial intelligence helps us do that. And we designed it in such a way that it is explainable. So we know how it's operating, we know what the inputs are, and we know that the outputs make sense. So artificial intelligence, that's a key part of developing those tools using AI.
Well, I think today on the news, I heard that we successfully flew a helicopter on Mars. And I was reflecting on that ahead of our program this morning with the use of drones flying over agricultural landscapes and helping deliver information so that the producer is better managing inputs and better managing tillage practices to provide the outcomes we want. So, boy, information technology is just exploding, and it's a critical tool in our toolbox. So, Ed, we've had a question from one of our participants today about backyard gardens and smaller landscapes. What are some of the practices that a homeowner might be able to use in his garden or in his shrubbery arrangements around the yard, around the home, to deliver some climate solutions? Are there any that you would recommend off the top of your head?
Sure. Going back to Florida-friendly landscape principles, you're always going to, first of all, try to only work within the plant palette that is correct for your area. Right plant, right place. You can't just buy plants out of catalogs and stick them in your yard and expect for them to grow correctly. You need to do a little research and look into what is what are the best natives and cultivars for your area that will tolerate your winters, your harsh summers, your rains or lack of rainfall. Try to incorporate an irrigation system that is designed for your landscape that is either being designed or is currently in place. And one of the most important things are trees. You always want to incorporate a few trees in any landscape, especially if it's anywhere near a building. You always want to consider the radiant heat factor on your home, along with your garden space. You could save a considerable amount of energy if you plant evergreens on the north side and deciduous trees on your east and west side. We could actually use your landscape not just to become better for the environment, but also for your energy conservation on your home.
Okay, thank you, Ed. So as I've learned working with the producers who are involved with Florida climate smart agriculture across the state, Florida is such a diverse state. All different types of commodities are grown, from citrus to cattle to berries to vegetables to sugar, dairy products, horticulture products, and all scales, large, small. There's such tremendous diversity. Yet the common threat that we all face as producers are the climate change threats that we've been talking about. And I've been reflecting, Amy, as you were starting to talk about nutrient management and what the advances in the biological systems that you work with can do to deliver solutions. And I was thinking about animals as we were talking about purchased inputs of fertilizer. Florida has lots of dairy cattle, lots of beef cattle that are natural living systems themselves that consume biomass and excrete manure. Can you talk a little bit about how animal manure might be used in parallel with commercial fertilizers to provide inputs in a more sustainable way?
Yeah, actually, I mean, so it's very interesting that you actually brought up manures, in particular the dairy industry. So when I talked about the feedstocks where we take the waste products, I didn't really mention the manures. I didn't think about it actually at the time. So manures is actually a product that we can utilize to build our product with. We're actually started on a project with the Dairy Association here in Florida to see if we can figure out a way to be able to take what is being produced today and we can utilize that. As we said, we break that down, it becomes a very important part of our product, and it's really the docking station for the nutrients when we combine it with our technology that we add. So I think manures in their raw form, I think it's very difficult, right? Because you have a society that doesn't like the odor, it's hard to transport. But I think there's technologies that are being developed in terms of biodigesters, people that are looking at it for different kinds of gas that produce then a digestate that can be utilized in a variety of different methods from agricultural purpose.
So there's lots of feedstocks that go into your particular fertilizer product. Yeah,
there is, and it's an issue, right? I mean, I think from a nutrient loss and a management standpoint, when you're putting it out in too heavy areas, you can end up with the same kind of nutrient runoff that you'll see from over applying fertilizer, right? That's happened in the Chesapeake Bay Area. It's happened up in the Great Lakes. You can actually see it in Iowa as well through the Mississippi River Delta when they have large rain events. And so I think it's prudent for us to look at different technologies, and they're out there. They'll get more cost efficient as we get more as we get farther along. That's my firm belief, because I believe that technology continues to advance and it becomes a part of your system rather than something that's extraneous that you put on top.
So, I mean, we had a question about the cost of your commercial product compared to other forms of nutrients. And that raises a broader question in my mind. If you could address that, that would be helpful. But sure. The broader question really is, if these purchased inputs are extra expenses that farmers have to incur to get a crop out, why isn't there more attention focused to managing those purchased inputs in a way to get the desired yields, yet minimize inputs so that we're reducing our list for water quality degradation or nitrogen escaping in the form of nitrous oxide? There's like kind of a tug of war there, isn't there, between wanting to apply enough to make sure you get a crop and yet not too much because that reduces your net return? Where is that these days?
Right. So Diane may have comments as well on this question because of what, she's doing with the University of Florida and heading up the agronomy department, but I can speak just from an industry perspective. One, from a fertilizer industry, we haven't really done any major innovations in fertilizer in about 40 years, right? So we're really quite new in terms of our technology. There's been coating technologies that have been used on nitrogen from a nitrogen efficiency standpoint. Those are heavily used in horticulture, nurseries, and in lawn care and landscape. However, in big agriculture, it's expensive, right? And it's a little bit cost prohibitive. So we haven't quite been able to finalize that. There's some out there, but it's not at a place where I would say that it's a standard practice everywhere for growers. When we looked at pricing our product, we actually looked at producing it and trying to get it as close to commodity pricing as what farmers are used to because of that fact, Ernie, because if you want farmers to be able to utilize it, they have to be able, for them, their farm is a business, right? So they look at their cost of inputs and what their output cost in terms of production is, and it has to pencil. So our cost is basically from a nutrient to nutrient basis, very similar to other production products that are out there today. It has a slight premium. It equates to a farmer on a standard practice about $4 or $5 an acre if it's just applied straight. But remember, that's actually looking at pound for pound. We recommend that you can utilize less because of the efficiency, so it tends to equate out. And if they utilize it pound for pound, they'll see greater productivity. So they actually make more money in all the work we have. And I think the farmers that have been using it and reusing it are attest to that. But I think one of the bigger drivers when we're going ahead is, as I talked about no innovations in fertilizer, there's been a lot of innovations in other areas such as crop hybrids and also in just overall technology like your artificial intelligence to be able to monitor. And quite frankly, what I think you'll see better hybrids as you go forward that'll be more efficient at utilizing nutrients. And I also think that will combine with your AI, right, that Diane is working on, that monitors what goes out. And then I think you'll combine that with products such as ourselves, right, one of many that will probably come down the line. And what you'll see is a greater efficiency use going forward, because you really need that combination to really have it be successful.
So Diane, over to you. You talked about the role of the University of Florida in research and extension, and this seems to be an extension issue. Knowledge sharing with farmers, helping them learn about these new technologies. What's your sense of what we can do to be accelerating this sharing of knowledge so that more and more farmers are adopting the artificial intelligence, the new tools in the toolbox we've been talking about, and so that we can get the outcomes we're looking at? What can we do to kind of ramp up more faster?
I think the key to this is being partners in the whole process. So we've done that, periodically in research, but I think really this is going to take an integrated approach where from the very beginning, stakeholders, producers, users are involved in the research process. One of the easiest ways to do that is to have our students involved with them. And that's because it does a couple of benefits. One is it gives our students direct, hands-on, very relevant experience that they crave, and that's what they want to see. It also gives then the industry stakeholders exposure to the next generation and helps us in our job of training those students, educating those students, but also they get to see what are the future employees and what are the skills that they value. So I think the integration of the users in the process throughout is going to be key to the adoption of those practices, because hopefully that integration is developing the tools that are usable and relevant from the very beginning. And then being involved in that whole process just makes a natural continuation of where those tools are tested then, and then eventually refined and adopted. So I think that's really a key. Now we talk about these things sort of like, this is great. Yes, this is what we should do. And it's easily integrated together, and it's not. That's a challenge. So we have to work very consciously about how to form that partnership, be an effective communication process between the two. And that just takes time and patience, I think, on both sides, from the university and from the stakeholders.
That's a great point, Diane. And that theme of co-creation, bringing farmers, ranchers, land managers together with researchers to work together as a team. So exciting to hear that's happening in Florida. And I'm sure it's going to yield more uptake in the practices as we go forward. But Ed, you had talked about some of the regulatory barriers and the maybe poorly thought out solutions that came the way of landscape management practices, mandates from county government, I think it was. But here again, isn't this another example where thinking about co-creating solutions, thinking about all tools in the toolbox, bringing the landscape professionals together with homeowners, together with farmers and environmental conservation partners to co-create. Have you seen more of that happening since you had that one experience with county government passing a sort of command and control, one standardized approach?
As a matter of fact, I have. It's a natural partnership because the landscape contractors and the nursery growers provide these services and products for the end users through builders and developers. And you would think that we would have been working better as growers and landscapers to partner with the construction industry and the Builders Association. We have to some degree, but since the fertilizer ordinance here, we have partnered together to slow down other bad ideas that have come down the pipe. And because of the University of Florida stepping in on the panel with Florida nursery growers and landscapers and the Builders Association here in my area, we were able to bring a reason to the table. And it's not good enough to get a political solution. If all you get is a headline and a feel-good story, and the environment suffers in the process, none of us win. So we don't have an agenda other than to make a living and to provide a quality service and a quality product. And we will work with anyone who is willing to be a partner in an honest way with us.
Well, folks, as our hour draws to a close, I'm hearing a number of common themes that have come out of this webinar. The need for co-creation, the need for multiple tools in the toolbox, the need to have effective collaborative partnerships with not just government and the people that are typically regulated, but all of the players, whether they're landowners, academic professionals, business partners, contractors working together. And as we think about how tremendously challenged these times are, and climate change is perhaps the accelerator of other challenges that we're facing, it does really require a 21st century approach to land management. And that's what we're trying to do with the Florida Climate Smart Agriculture Initiative, where the people that work the land, that make their living off the land, are really redefining the core function of agriculture, forestry, from a sector that produces commodities to a sector that, sure, will always produce food and fiber, but they do so much more than that. And how can we, as society, help enable and support the delivery of all of these ecosystem services that come from well-managed farms, ranches, and forests, so that there is an incentive, a way that the public can help farmers and ranchers landscapers and foresters do even a better job of managing their land. That's what we're about. We hope you've enjoyed the hour presentation this morning. This will be taped and made available. So Ed, Amy, Diane, thank you so much. Thank you for our partners at the Volo Foundation for putting agriculture on the stage today. It's a growing industry that has a lot to bring to the table, and we're delighted to be a part of the climate conference this year. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Ernie.
Thank you, Ernie.